Freddie and Jeremiah Vargas from Tater Baseball. We're excited to have you in talk about some of the very real and big headlines as far as touching your business in the sport of baseball with the torpedo bat. Sure, you have some insights on that, but then also really just kind of talking about the upcoming event on 4/24 around sports and innovation for shaping CT's future. And back again, Rob Thompson from just say Walter Camp, but co-founder of Gridiron 1880.
Yeah.
So how are you guys? Did you guys play, or did you just love the sport? How did you get into?
We grew up as a baseball family.
Yeah.
I think by the time I was 2, I was on the field. My dad was a coach, and same thing with Jeremiah. And then we both played college baseball, and baseball was literally everything. After school, before school, weekends, vacations were revolved around baseball.
Yeah. Yeah, the family vacations were travel games and stuff like that.
Delaware, Florida, you name it.
Yeah.
We have a 7-year age gap, so it was a cycle where we were doing all that for Freddie, and then it turned around, and once I got to 13, 14, it started getting really busy for me with baseball as well.
Cool. So what was the sort of inspiration? You guys said you're a baseball family. Was it something that you saw in the equipment that you were using, or was it access? Was it design? What kind of got you into
starting
bats?
Tater?
Yeah.
It was like a snowball effect to start. I retired from baseball, and I dedicated my time to school, and I was getting my first job in the same component. Jeremiah was playing competitive baseball, and my dad was designing different types of training bats. And it became, how can we help him get better at hitting?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was short bats, heavy bats. I mean, he used to train hitting sledgehammers on a massive tire. So my dad went to designing something better. And it kind of culminated into how can we help other kids get better? So we started as a training bat company.
Okay.
And we focused so hard on making a quality training bat that was accessible, because we did make training bats out of high-grade steel, which was pretty pricey, and then we transitioned to wood. And once we transitioned to wood, folks were saying, hey, your training bats don't break. Why don't you guys make gamers? And that's kind of like the start of Tater.
Mm. And then what was the vision, right? Like when you started to get that feedback, what was the moment, or was there a moment where you kind of realized like this is going to be our business?
We did a proof of concept launch where we went to a sports complex in Connecticut and started doing Tater bats.
Mm-hmm.
And it was basic bats. It was black handle, natural barrel, and we really wanted to see if there was a interest in the market for a new bat company. It's very inundated space.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of players that are big and small. Whether there's guys who are doing it in their garage, in the basement, to companies with 7, 8 warehouses making bats. So we wanted to test the market because we were having some success with the training bats. And, Jeremiah played on one of the premier teams called Baseball U. And, I'll let him cover that in a minute. But they were one of the first organizations to really use Tater. And once the kids started finding a lot of success, word spreads quickly. We focused primarily on quality. We knew that the baseball industry is very small, and people like, word of mouth is a big thing.
Yeah.
And it's a very unique industry compared to, selling an iPhone charger, where it doesn't matter what kind of charger it is as long as it does the job.
And you throw it on Amazon and anyone can buy it, right? It's a
Anyone,
little bit of a different market, right?
Yeah, we compare the baseball bat industry similar to craft breweries, especially in that time frame of when we started Tater on 2015, where craft breweries are popping up in every corner in every town. That was similarly happening with the baseball bat market. So it was key differentiators and how can we separate ourselves from everyone else. We are some of the youngest guys in the space that own a baseball brand, so we had that to our advantage in being so close to the game as well.
What was the jump, or how did you make the jump from training and probably private sales or kind of younger players to college or pro?
So we bought our first lathe off of eBay for $200 and started making the bats out of the shed, an 8x8 shed. and Jeremiah was using some other, different brands. And as we were learning more about the wood and making a quality product, we realized, wow, we're paying $200 for a subpar piece of wood. And we quickly realized that if you're not a big name player or someone notable, some suppliers won't give you the best grade stuff, even though they tell you it's MLB grade. And we realized, okay, let's see what we can do to avoid that. And we started looking at different wood suppliers. And I mean, we bought wood from every supplier in the space. So while we were doing a soft launch, testing, we were still doing a lot of R&D, where we had Manny Cruz and Jeremiah hitting every weekend. Manny Cruz was our first pro guy, played for the Cincinnati Reds, trying different wood, same model, same design of the bat, and measuring exit velocity, swing speed. And we were doing this 2015, and that's now becoming a prevalent thing.
Yeah,
now.
right.
So we were a little bit ahead of the curve on that. And then testing the differences between where the wood is grown, whether it's in New York, Pennsylvania, Canada, or Maine, depending on, and then wood species. So, circling back to your initial question is like, that transition was, hey, we figured out how to make a quality bat. And at one point, we were going to say, you know what, this industry is too difficult to get into because it's so inundated and there's a lot of competition. And we realized that a lot of companies do have high investment, whether they're partly owned by a hedge fund or someone starts a company with $400K or $500K in their pocket. Because at the essence, anyone can make a baseball bat. They buy the machine, they buy a lathe, they can buy a piece of wood and shave it into shape. But during that first summer, a couple things happened where folks would say, hey, how are you going to compete with Louisville Slugger, or how are you going to compete with this other operator? And it was just that same story that kind of turned into motivation to say, you know what, we know that we can compete with them, and we're going to focus on quality. And I know I repeat quality, but it's such a major component, because a baseball bat and a baseball glove might be some of the most personal items in all of sports. You can interchange cleats, you can interchange across other sports, people share the football, share a basketball, right? But a baseball bat is yours, a glove is yours. So I don't know if you want to.
So can I jump in here? So,
go for it.
This is what I'm really interested in. I'm interested in the story because, as you guys know, most people, they try to reverse engineer how they launch a sports product, and that's usually into an endorsement. And you mentioned, right, the validation of a pro athlete using your brand. And a lot of people, well, I got to get to the Yankees. I have to get to a Major League Baseball team or their strength and conditioning coach or their batting coach because I want that validation to sell my product. I'm interested to hear the story about your dad, right? Because it seems like your dad is the story to this whole thing, right? It seems like he may be the beginning of it, right? If it kind of get passed down, right? So tell us a story about what your dad did and how did he influence this entire thing?
I would say my dad started influencing Tater early on, and it starts at, we can just talk about Freddie and I's youth baseball careers and just influencing in the sense of building good relationships with people. So I think my dad is, he's the mastermind in the sense of the engineering aspect and at the root of helping us maintain quality throughout the last couple of years and since we started. But the biggest component that I wanted to add on is the relationship building that we've done since we started, that he's helped ingrain to us since, the essence of Tater and prior to that as well, where engagements with professional athletes or teams and things like that kind of happen because of organic relationships that we built with maybe someone we met at a ballpark in North Branford, Connecticut, or Stamford, Connecticut, things like that. Yeah. You got anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think at the very beginning, we were really quick to separate duties. And I think everybody here has something different to bring to the table.
Get their own superpower.
My dad was, very entrepreneurial. And when I used to help him, whether it was flipping houses or he owned a bar for a little while. So I was
there you go.
every Sunday morning cleaning.
There you go.
Being entrepreneurial, we knew, I always wanted to own or start a company since I was 12, 13. He was pushing that on me to whether he knew it or not. But once we decided to start the company, it was, hey, my dad was going to focus on making the highest quality bat, and then we would focus on the business aspect.
Yeah, got it. I mean, the conference that we have is on the 24th, is about sports innovation. And when I first met with BJ and the team here was back in, I would say, December. And I came in and said, because I grew up here, I moved away and then I came back and I'm like, why isn't the state talking about sports and innovation? You know how much the wiffle ball was in the bat was created here, right? As you guys know, the generation. American football was created here. Starter was started here, right? ESPN, the Frisbee. There's a lot here. I think this state gets looked past over, and you guys know you grew up here too. Sports innovation is part of our DNA here, right? And when you look at that, the story starts way back when with just the grittiness of what came out of this market with the Industrial Revolution, and you guys in the area you came up with. The second part is I think this state is overlooked for baseball talent. And I went to UNH back in the day and in the 80s and 90s when that entire team got drafted or signed. That's 12 players from one college baseball team at a Division II level in 1988 and 87. All those cats went to the league. There was 90 guys that came out of University of New Haven that played in Major League Baseball. That's a lot of dudes.
It's a lot of dudes.
It's a lot of dudes. That's not Alabama. That's not Auburn. That's New Haven, right?
Yeah.
So that story for what you guys are telling right now, I think it goes back to, I mean, you could go back to Mo Vaughn and boom, 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 right? There's a ton of talent that comes out of this state for Major League Baseball. So it doesn't matter where you are. You still have that connectivity back to entrepreneurship, sports innovation, baseball. Yeah, well, the wiffle ball and wiffle bat is 20 minutes from where you guys grew up. Right there. It's still there. Right? So I think that's the bigger story in this whole thing that we have to unload on is, you guys have a bat that you created here. Yes, you have major league players up here. You know that the market is down on the bottom, right? It's that U6 to U14. That's where you're going to make your coin, right? So, but you start from the top to the bottom. But the real story is dad, entrepreneurship, baseball, underlooked in Connecticut, jump on the bandwagon, and you got an entrepreneurial spirit. So that's what we're going to talk about in Foxwoods on the 24th. And you guys are going to be a big part of that story.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And the relationships, you guys said it too. Like, you were aware enough to know that, the connections you were making that potentially were going to further the playing career were also, going to be valuable for other reasons. And it seems like that's also what you were kind of able to intuitively leverage, once you felt you had a product that was competitive or superior, then, now it's okay, well, how did that all sort of operate, right? Like, who do we have to get in front of? Who do we have to get to, to sort of rekindle our relationship with, to, get this in players' hands? And it seems like that's kind of the approach that you guys took.
I would say, to touch on some of the points that you had made about baseball in the state, back when my dad had first designed the first training bat for me, I was doing a lot of training with Darren Bragg, who had a lengthy baseball career in MLB with different teams, I think around 10 and 12 years. And at the time, he was one of those guys that was implementing sledgehammers with me, and we're swinging pipes and things like that. So I think a lot of the professional baseball aspect seemed attainable for us when we started Tater. It was like, we can do this. We do have connections, and how can we leverage the brand and quality product with those connections to continue moving forward? But I think the core essence would be there was a big shift of we can make a great product, but what do people really care about? Because there's a lot of brands that make a good product, but maybe not too many people care about the brand. And we kept coming across the term of everyone was falling in love with Tater because of the story and what we believed in the essence of we wanted to help players perform better at the plate. And there was a lot of training aspect. So although Tater's primarily known as a game bat company, the training aspect has always been something that's like taken us in the innovation aspect to inroads with different players and teams and organizations.
So let's jump into the business side of it. So access to capital in the state. Venture capital, did you guys bootstrap it? How are you going to scale this thing, and how are you going to market it, right? Half of it, 9% of this thing is people if they don't know about it, they're not going to buy it. And then what's your channel for distribution and sales?
I guess I'll start. when we started the company, we started with $200 or $300.
Nice.
We were adamant on not giving out. We knew within the first year that we were going to blow up.
Yeah.
Just with the vision that we had as a family, because when we said we were going to be committed to it, I guess to explain the financial part, you have to understand the decision we made. When we encountered a crossroads where we said, are we going to do this or not?
Yeah.
And we said, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it to the best ability that we can and compete with the best players in the game, or we're just not going to do it because it doesn't make sense to do mediocre work. And then once we did that, the work started showing for itself. So we very much bootstrapped the company. My father did loan us about 40 grand just to buy our first machine. And we quickly realized if you want to buy big league wood, you got to buy 20 or 30 grand worth of big league wood. And we didn't know that at the time. So I thought I can call the wood supplier and say, hey, I need 10 logs.
We're going in the
15
backyard.
And, fortunately, my dad had a really good relationship with New Jam Tool out of Waterbury, and he kind of footed the bill for the first skid. And then we paid him back within 2 months. And after that, we kind of did a great job at, we didn't take any money out of the company for the first 6-7 years.
Wow.
So we haven't had any investors. We haven't had to give away equity, or we've had several conversations with multitude of athletes, talking about 7-figure investments, and we kind of declined.
Yeah. Is that still the mindset? You guys want to keep it private, or?
I think so for right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been able to, move mountains with just the sheer, ability to kind of maneuver into space of. And when we talk about relationships, I know Jeremiah hit on the game bat and training bat, but what really inspired all the other segments was players loved the story and wanted to help Tater and the community that we've been able to build. Because, Jan Gomes has said it best. He says, Tater's a brotherhood. If you see a guy with a Tater, for a fact they know Freddie, they know Jeremiah, they know my dad.
So you guys are focused on a premier or premium product. You're not going to be showing up on East Bay anytime soon, or?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean, if Dick's Sporting Goods came by and wanted to order 10,000
You're not
bats,
going to push them
we're
away.
not going to push them away. But,
we're good for that. So it's still it's a premium product.
Premium product across the board.
Yeah.
Throughout my college playing years is when we started building up all of our sub-products.
Yeah.
So when I was away at Stonehill College playing, I was about 2.5 hours away, so I couldn't have too much of an impact on bat production.
Yeah.
So Freddie and I started working on all of our ancillary products, fielding gloves, apparel, batting gloves, you name it, anything that we would use on field. And that was a nice proof of test measure that, we get to use a product every day, but also understand what people really want outside of what I just want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So the bat itself is just cash flow. It's been cash flow in the business for the last several years.
We've had our ups and downs. There's years where you lose money, but I used my college credit card to start for the first year. Once Tater could support himself, we got a business credit card, and that was our kind of cash flow.
You feel like adults then, right?
Yeah.
Get your first business credit card.
Yeah, it's really funny, and I can give you an example of like what we had to do is and the result of it. There was a time when we couldn't make our at least the minimum payment because sales were kind of slow. Baseball season was ending, and I went to a baseball field because I knew there was a game, and I met a guy there, and his son turned out to be a pro athlete. He said, hey, my son plays in Dominican Winter League. I would love to have him, I can't believe you're in Waterbury.
Yeah.
Let's send him a bat. And my mind says, I came here to make sales, and I'm giving away a bat. But that turned around, full circle, 6 to 8 months, just, doing the right thing and taking that chance. We ended up getting 3 or 4 big leaguers just by sending a bat to Dominican Republic, which is crazy.
They like it. They have success. Their
Right.
teammates notice, and then that's where it starts to. I mean, it's what we're seeing in the league right now as far as the torpedo bat goes, right? It's the new, kind of craze as far as who's having success and can I have the similar success if I switch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. But primarily for sales channels, talk about that.
Yeah.
We're a big e-commerce brand. We're shipping globally. We do have a good footprint in the state with our retail component of in-store sales and things like that. But primarily e-commerce and the professional baseball industry is still a big component for us as well, where we have touch points B2B with directly to the teams, directly to players, B2C technically, and then colleges, travel organizations, you name it. We kind of touch every life cycle of a baseball player, which is pretty unique and fun to help players at 6 years old and help players that are competing against the best in the world.
What is your, kind of that model look like, that graph look like for you with sales? I mean, where are you guys right now from units moved from, say, pre-COVID to now?
COVID was like the best thing that could have potentially happened to us. A lot of companies closed, and because it was me, Jeremiah, and my dad making all the bats, we would go to the shop. I was clear coating, staining bats, handing off relationships to my brother because I was painting all the bats. My dad was running the production, and while a lot of competitors were closed, we were getting big leaguers and minor league players to reach out, and that was really kind of the biggest thing to spread the word. And that was right after Jeremiah finished graduating college. So from then to now, we've been almost doubling every year.
Were they reaching out because they were kind of seeking new equipment, or because they had heard from their teammates of Tater?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I mean, Vladdy was a player that needed bats, and we sent him straight to Dominican Republic because other companies were closed because of whether the regulations were, and that was one. And then guys realized, oh, Vladdy's using this bat. They all have trained together, I'm sure, in the Dominican Republic, and the word spreads quickly, and then they share bats. Starling Marte has been a great asset for us in kind of spreading the word. For a while, he was like trading bats with players, and I'm like, hey, I can send you other bats. Don't send them the gamers we make you. We can make you something else to share with them, because what you like may not be what they like. But I think it's last year was our best year ever in the history of Tater. So it's been we've been fortunate.
Yeah, I would say we're about 80% e-commerce, 20% retail in-store. A big thing to note, like pre-COVID, is from 2015 to that 2019, 2020 mark, we're a little crazy in the aspect of Freddie was still working his full-time job and still continues to do so. My dad working a full-time job, my mom as well, and I was in college.
Mom involved.
Yeah, so
Get mom involved.
the core essence of Tater during the weekday was we were working 6 to 9 o'clock was our store hours, but it was really Freddie and my dad were driving home straight to work at Tater from their day job till 11 or 12 o'clock at night. And then that time in COVID was when everyone was working from home. I came home early for my senior year of college, and we're finally all together day to day, 8-10 hours working on our business with no interruptions. And that was a big component of kind of
really
why we started
right?
that upward trajectory of really being able to put tons of time and effort into what we wanted to do.
So talk about the family dynamic, right? Have you guys, because I know it's always difficult. I went into business for a little while with my wife, and 34 years later, we're still married, so it wasn't that bad. But we knew our roles, right? We knew our roles. Did it take you guys a while to figure out, like, if you're going to be the sales, marketing, and you're the operations behind this, right? How did it, financial, I would assume you're on that side too, and you're out there swinging the bat, getting deals done. Did it take you guys a while to kind of figure that part out, and do you step on each other's toes now with anything, or do you just kind of say, hey, man, we just love each other so much, and we're in this together with dad and mom and everybody else, that we stay in our lane? I mean, how has that evolved for you two?
You go first. I'll chime in.
I think it goes back to like pre-Tater, right? Like my dad was a coach.
Yeah.
And I still remember when I was like 8-9 years old, sitting on the floor, calling each parent, letting them know when practice was going to be. And that time, parents would do that, right? So it was, as we grew up close and we experienced things while opening up Tater. I mean, we've done a lot of things that, it was tough moments, right? And we talked about them, we talked through them. And there was times where there was like a gray area where everyone was doing a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
But then as Tater started to grow, it was kind of a natural progression of, hey, this person's going to focus on this person's going to focus on this, but we'll sub in when we can. And, we've had shared moments of like high points and low points. And I think with that, I mean, we probably have only argued once, and I was like at the very beginning. And then other than that, we were like, hey, we're in this together. Competition is fierce. People don't want to see us succeed. So let's just work as a team. And it's never needed to be said, because I think we all just understand, and we've been together for so long that it was, it was natural.
Yeah. I would say starting a business is incredibly hard in general, but when you do it with family, it could either go really well or it'd be even harder. But we found a really good dynamic across the board with everyone understanding what needs to be done to take it to the next step. My mom is the one behind the scenes that's really keeping everything together and
Always.
making sure we're fed and making sure things are ready to go for Tater and, keeping everyone in loop. So I would say, Freddie, like he mentioned earlier, we tackle a bunch of the responsibilities on the business aspect, whether it's operationally, financially, marketing, branding. And as we've grown, we've added some more people to our team to help assist with production and shipping and receiving like that, because there was a time, from 2015 to 2022 that we were doing everything, manufacturing all the bats ourselves, shipping, client relations, and building the brand. So as we started to scale, we started to bring a couple more people on board to help us, which was also not an easy thing to do, but you learn as you go and you keep pushing forward.
Yeah, you realize what it's like when you have to cut someone else a paycheck, right? That's your biggest investment. It's not the product or the wood, right? It's that, man, what can we do with that salary? Are we making the right move? You don't appreciate it until you have to stroke it, right?
Yeah.
So, what else, BJ?
Are you getting any special requests these days? Like, we're getting pushed into different parts of the sport, whether it's equipment or more, lifestyle elements. What's that kind of roadmap look like for Tater?
Yeah, I work on a lot of the product development with Freddie, but I've kind of like started spearheading that postgraduate career. Every day there's like a new shiny object, I would say. And there was a time when we were younger that we would try everything. And I think now that we've grown older and matured in the sense of business, that we're a little more strategic on what we do. Over the course of the last 3 years, we started implementing like team uniforms and team apparel to get that on-field aspect of it, which has been a big generator for us. But the lifestyle opportunities for Tater has been kind of like a new and fresh thing for Tater. That's like, these guys are cool, and giving us touch points with different aspects of, these guys are not just a baseball bat company. They're a full brand that encompasses the athlete on and off the field.
Yeah, I mean, so kind of the off-field, like, recovery, whether it's apparel or gear or, do you see it being more sort of kind of tech-driven or product-driven, or just, a lot of companies are trying to weave in a media element, be more of a platform and produce content and, kind of monetize that in some way. Has there been any urge that you guys have?
Yeah, we've been building it internally content-wise and separating ourselves on that aspect of it, where when we do have a relationship with a player, whether it's college, pro, or even amateur, that we're able to capitalize on things through content and media. But the tech is a big thing for us. On the training aspect, we've been building a lot of, let's say, regimens around what's really going on in baseball and making that accessible to most people who want to access that data and whatnot. So you can touch on a little bit about like the training aspect, tech. We've been doing tons of stuff on that front.
Yeah. You were advanced metrics before they were advanced.
Yeah. I mean, my background is data, so I still do a lot of data analysis. But we quickly learned when we started innovating that competitor, obviously, like I mentioned, competition is fierce and everybody's watching, that we started getting replicated. So one slogan when we first started was often imitated, never duplicated, and we kind of moved away from that as we grew as a brand. But we started getting patents and trademarks on all of our training bats. And there's been moments where we can kind of create a new product, and then a company spins out of nowhere, whether it's affiliated with a major brand or not, and only sells that one product that we made and we designed, and we worked hand in hand with Guillermo Martinez, big league hitting coach for the Toronto Blue Jays, and a couple other big name training hitting coaches, and say, we've designed a suite of 15 to 20 training bats, and half of them are not even available on the site because they're in the process of getting trademarked and patented between the name and the use patent. So we are in the compass, very close to finishing up the patent on the split grip bat, which is our primarily number one used training bat. It's in every big league clubhouse. And when Maya's talking about regiments, we've partnered with TrackMan, which is a data collection company, and we have used that split grip with our torpedo training bat that we designed years ago for overload, underload training, and we were able to prove, with science and data, that kids and players who use the bat increase their exit velocity, and they have obviously more barrel control and swing efficiency after using the bat for 3 or 4 weeks. We've worked with different clubhouses to kind of design programs, whether they follow them to a T or not, or make their own spin to it. We have done that type of work in the past couple of years.
You had sort of mentioned torpedo bat, and a couple of years ago, obviously that's all the headlines now. I guess for someone that's not necessarily as ingrained in the game, is that truly a new concept? And when that hit, was it a scramble to now sort of have a model that mirrored that, or has that been around for a while and just hasn't gotten publicity?
Yeah, there's been a constant evolution of baseball bats since the start of bats being manufactured. Torpedo bats kind of always been in line. We've been making a torpedo bat since it was one of the first models we ever made for slow pitch softball players. And then around 2021, we made our underload trainer for bat speed and swing speed in that shape of a torpedo on the fat end. To start seeing it take into shape like opening weekend, it's pretty cool to see how it's been in progress for several years now, and then guys start hitting some home runs and it picks up media steam. But for us, it was a natural progression to okay, now it's our time to really capitalize and jump on the opportunity, and it's something that we've been working on for quite some time. And I think it started showing a little bit on the media outside of what we've done to kind of bring light in players wanting to use torpedo bats.
Is there science behind it, or is it mental? It's a new tool. It gives them more confidence to when they're in the box.
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, we've been doing bat fittings since forever, since we first started. I still remember days where we used to FaceTime players, and I would show them the screen over my dad's shoulder and say, "Hey, this is what you need to do. We can show you how hard you're going to hit the ball on a 95-mile-an-hour fastball down the plate, four-seamer. If you square it up, this is what's going to happen." So we've been designing different bats for that, and we've never really publicized that because we don't want to educate our competitors.
Yeah.
But in the same breath, custom bats designed for the players, it's going to be the new wave, which I think has been transitioning to that for quite some time now. And what we find is guys like Marte, where we really refined the bat. He hasn't needed to change, but it's always good to try. And we spent a lot of time with guys like Jan Gomes. He just recently retired, but he's a veteran in the space, played quite a few years in the big leagues. And after at the beginning of every year, we would talk and say, "How do you feel with this bat? Do we need to make it heavier?" So on and so forth. But going back to torpedo bat, I mean, we've been making adjustments to models and moving the sweet spot for a while. So whether it may work for a couple guys, it might not work for everyone. I think there is a space for it, but it might not be a turnkey solution for everyone.
Yeah,
I think a big thing is a different shape as well, to touch on the confidence aspect of it, where guys see, well, this bat looks huge, where I actually really hit the ball. And but the tech behind understanding where a player's sweet spot is and maneuvering it to how they actually swing is the other component that most don't see. That
well, it's all 2.61 inches or whatever, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's not actually not any bigger. It's just, that's the mental
There's
piece.
a lot that changes in the bat once you start shifting the barrel down a little more towards a torpedo that we can talk about for hours. But it changes the way a bat feels drastically too.
So when I think part of what we talk about in some of these event series is Connecticut, its location, pros, cons, and we're trying to break a bit of you're just between New York and Connecticut, and there's Connecticut sleepy, and the stigmas that come with it. Have you run into any of that? Having to have these relationships with these players, do the custom fittings. Are you coming to them, or you go to them? Are they coming to you? Is it all virtual? Have you had trouble getting them in Connecticut? Is there a move in the future?
I think the furthest someone has traveled to come to our shop was from Venezuela. They traveled, I think, 17 hours to come see us.
Wow.
And they were here for 2 days and went back down. But sometimes it is difficult to draw. But at this in the same component, we've had players that are playing in the Boston Red Sox organization and drive down before their game and go back. And then we can we design a bat, cut it, and they use it that same day. So it's kind of like a benefit more than a deterrent. But, Connecticut, in terms of baseball, is not known for having, you have your Florida, Texas, California, obviously. But being pretty central, I mean, we have, 4 or 5 big league clubhouses within 2 or 3 miles, 2 or 3 hours. And it helps. We've been able to, we've had instances where players forget their bats and they're playing at Yankee Stadium, and Jeremiah and I wake up at 4 a.m, driving down, meet them up for breakfast, and here you go, here's your 3 bats for today.
That's what you got to do.
Yeah.
That's a benefit of being in Connecticut. I would say we're so close to the city.
Right.
Mets, Yankees, Red Sox, even if you got to go down to D.C. on a day and whatnot, and even Philly and Pittsburgh. But, it's been although representation in Connecticut has kind of like starting to go down in terms of professional baseball with how competitive it's been, we're starting to see a little bit of an uptick with youth and amateur players really starting to make a name for themselves when they're playing against kids from Florida, California, and Texas, where it may not be represented right away, but there's a consistent at least 1, 2, or 3 athletes that get drafted or signed every year that are starting to bring that rhetoric back that baseball is here to stay in Connecticut, and we're starting to see a lot more teams enter the space in advising or even scouting players from the state because they're whether it's data-backed training stuff that's helping these kids separate from those kids that are down south.
And pitchers,
yeah.
Pitchers, right? Because you can only pitch so much,
Right.
Connecticut was always loaded with pitchers. This whole area, the Northeast.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because you can only pitch so much. That's the qualifier. But when you're playing 85 games and you're 12 years old and you live in Georgia and Florida, that's a game changer.
Oh yeah,
that's a game changer. But so, how do people find out about you guys? Where do they find you?
Big on socials: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Tater Baseball, e-commerce sites taterbaseball.com. But those are our biggest channels right now.
Good. We got mom on the front.
You know it.
Yeah. I mean, has the shift to the name, image, likeness, the NIL kind of players actually being able to, but also embracing more of that public persona and visibility, has that been a component you think that has helped keep at least Connecticut or the Northeast competitive with some of the wider?
Yeah.
You want to cover it?
You go first.
Yeah, NIL has been a game changer for a lot. Obviously, we see everything that happens with the Huskies and the eyeballs that those basketball players get. In terms of baseball, we've been able to use we've always had relationships with young players, and you can see where it's actually been twofold for us, where some guys don't want to take NIL deals from other brands because they want to stay loyal to Tater, because they have grown a following and kids follow them because we either repost or have done collaborative content with them.
Yep.
And that's if they didn't have an NIL deal. And then there are instances where we do have some deals where we can see, hey, some kids, the 12-year-old that looks up to the college player or the minor league ball player that they used to train at the same facility looks up to him and wants the same model. So we've done stuff with like Matt Batten, who's played on the Padres, based out of Trumbull, and we made his own bat model for amateur players, and before you know it, half the clubhouse at Technique Tigers was swinging the Matt Batten model.
Yeah.
So
it seems like it'd be a big jump for some of the mid-market, local markets that there are local celebrities, right? People that you played with in high school, and they were amazing players, and they weren't the 0.01%, but people still talk about them, hold them in high regard. So there's a driving force there for sure.
Absolutely. I think content is huge, especially with the younger demographic right now, where it's getting so much easier for them to shoot good content too and market themselves. So we're starting to see a shift where maybe a 14 to 16-year-old baseball player who was really good at branding themselves might have a little more influence than a big league player who plays every day. You start to see some components of how that looks like with big-time colleges entering the state. We work with a couple younger guys like Quincy Bright, who's going to Mississippi State, big-time school, and Thomas O'Connell is going to University of Virginia, where maybe 5-10 years ago, if they're in the space, they have the talents to go to those schools, but now the awareness of what the social content brings to players in this area has an influence.
So as far as, part of the event, right, we want to talk about the drivers of the economy here in Connecticut. And Rob had mentioned some of the firsts and the innovations that came here. And we kind of talk about how do we maintain the lead edge of that innovation. It feels like Connecticut's known for starting out inventing some things, but then someone else takes that and continues to innovate on it, and we sort of lose steam and lose credit for some of the firsts. So how can businesses here, how can Tater, how can others that are going to be in attendance in this event, what are some ways you think we can kind of preserve this growth of the space, of the industry?
I think it starts with people marketing themselves as thought leaders. That's a big one, where sometimes we are first to market, but sometimes it's whoever does it best, right? So if you're, it's hard. It's hard to balance life and work, obviously, and sometimes people make a decision where they say, "Hey, I'm kind of run the road on like whether it's innovating or you name it." I think we're fortunate to have good engineering programs at the different colleges, especially that we have a lot of aerospace companies and a lot of chemical companies here based out of Connecticut. We're building planes and helicopters, like maybe 45 minutes away. Going back to sports, it's really like honing down and creating a community of folks that can maybe help each other out and say, hey, this has worked in the tennis space, or this has worked in the baseball space, or whatever have you. Of protecting assets is a big one. We've already felt that, it's curious to see what's going to happen obviously in the economy now with IP trademarks and everything going on overseas. Is what's going to happen with that. Fortunately we do manufacture a lot of our own stuff, but it's pretty easy for someone to rip off whether it's the same bat model or try to recreate some of our apparel, or you name it. So it's really just it really comes down to marketing and branding. Same thing goes with how did Apple do it, and how did they differentiate themselves from Windows? You're talking about 10, 15, 20 years ago. Yeah. Is really showing and marketing yourself as a thought leader in whatever capacity that you're trying to create. So
recreate the Mac versus PC commercials with Tater and Louisville Sluggers or something like that.
Freddie mentioned the great programs that are in and around the state for college students, and I think a big component is how can we keep that young talent that's attending these universities doing a really good job when they're there in Connecticut, not wanting to travel to maybe New York or Boston to have an impact on what they want to work on. And I think there's an emergence of brands and companies that have a place for those types of students or graduates. Victory Souls is another one that's done a great job in Connecticut in sport. I think they'll be at Shaping CT as well, that have made a great name for themselves across different sports. But, it's an incredible opportunity for students that live in Connecticut or kids that grew up in Connecticut to stay.
Yeah, and it seems like, Rob, you had mentioned it earlier, the sort of money's at the volume and the money's at the younger players, and hopefully they start to kind of idolize. They want to live the Tater lifestyle, and they appreciate the story and the quality and everything else, and then that's something they take with them. So if they're not going to play here and they're going to go to some of the bigger schools, you create that relationship early and you go with them.
Yeah, I think the one thing is, it's jumping back a little bit, but I just started thinking about it. If you look at Connecticut as far as being an industry agnostic kind of place, right? And there's not many regions in the United States that have what we have. We're so close to 1 in 4 size cities in Philadelphia. And where you guys grew up, that whole area was all industry, right? All the old factories, right? So your grandparents, parents all remember it. I grew up in West Haven. I remember the Armstrong Rubber Company burning down one night, right? So everybody was blue collar. And right down the street was all the money.
Yep.
Right? Was all the money. So most of us who grew up from probably Bridgeport all the way to New Haven, we're all blue collar people. right? All the
Right.
money is right down. There's not many places in the United States, maybe Gary, Indiana for a little while with Chicago and stuff, but
Right.
this is it. This is the spot where innovation happened, things got built, and it got funded by the money coming up right up 95. There's not a lot of play. You pick this up and you put this anywhere else. So I think it's a combination of all of those things. Then you drop on top of it the talent, the research, development from all the universities and the talent that's here. And most of these kids didn't grow up here. They came here, right? And just like 80% of this room didn't grow up here. So you come here for a reason. Like no one twisted anybody's arm to come live here, right? You came here for a reason. Because there's a lot worse places in the United States to live, and this is not one of them, or to start a business. Right? So the influx, when I came back, I couldn't believe that there were grants out there for almost $1 billion to fuel the ecosystem. That doesn't happen everywhere. There's a nonprofit organization that has $800 million to give out, the New Haven Foundation. Where is that? No one else has that. We have it. So that influx of talent, people who grew up with DNA of industry, blue collar, and then you got all the people with the money that are, I can go have lunch with them this afternoon if I need that. That's different here. And unless you've been out in the world and you come back and I look at that with completely different lens now. I'm like, you know what? This is not a bad place if you're going to start a bat company or a shoe company or Starter Sports who knocked off Nike and everybody else. So when you guys say we're after it, we're going to go after these guys, I believe you. I believe what you're saying because it could happen. Why not? How did Starter do it? They knocked off everybody. Right? Everybody in the 80s and 90s. He knocked them all off. What backing did he have? He started off as a body bag company. Then he made a satin jacket. You guys started out in your garage.
Yeah. You make a good, quality product. And what is really compelling about your story is that you're saying, we don't want to give any part of it up yet, right? So the dollars are there if you want to go get them, but part of it is you're continuing to tell your story. And I'd say there's the difference with Connecticut is so often the innovations that get funded then lose the soul of who started it, right? And that's where the message starts to die. And that's, we need to tell more of the stories that's what we're trying to do with, shaping CT's future, but, put more of the stories out, right? And change the narrative a little bit, and you kind of said it and it's true. And I cringe every time. It's like helicopters, submarines. Insurance companies, just like, we want to be known for more, like what Rob's saying. But, we don't have people that are really championing that story.
Not until now. Not a lot of places have ESPN.
Right.
Not a lot of places have NBC Sports. Not a lot of places has WWE. Argue that. You can't argue the fact that American football was created here and born here, right? New Haven, Connecticut. It's a fact. Now, could you argue that this is the pizza capital of the world? Yeah, you could argue it if I'm from New York. Right? Could you argue that it's the basketball capital of the world? Probably. Springfield probably has something to say because that's where it started. Right? But you can't argue what we did here in the sports industry. So now it's about to change. Right? And it's like let's make people aware of that. So anyways, you guys are so much part of that story and what you've been able to do because you're no different than anybody else that started off in the garage and well, you're building bats, not computers. Anyway, so Freddie and Jeremiah, thank you.
No problem.
BJ.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for having us.
I like the shirt because it pops with the black. Maybe was that your thing today?
I was told to wear color. Yeah, well, and then you said the first time you've seen me without a hat.
I never seen you without a hat. Who knew? I thought you had a whole full set of hair.
It's there. I mean, it could be there. It's a lot of work to maintain it.
But the beard, you are the beard, though.
Yeah.
You
appreciate
lead the
that.
league in the beard.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
BJ?
Thank you.
Yeah.